You've seen the movies. The hooded figure melts out of shadows, silent as smoke. A flick of the wrist, a single clean strike, and another tyrant falls, while our hero vanishes into the night like a ghost with perfect cheekbones and zero regrets. Yeah, cute fantasy. Let me tell you what actually happened. Pull up a chair, dim the lights, maybe grab something to drink, because we need to talk about the truth nobody tells you. The reality is, being a medieval assassin didn't mean sipping wine on moonlit rooftops. It meant crouching in a ditch that smelled like someone else's failure, wondering if you should have brought a snack for this stakeout, because it's been 3 days and your target still hasn't shown up, and you're starting to think maybe that informant just wanted your last coin and a good laugh. Before we dive into this nightmare, take a second to hit that like button if you enjoy history that doesn't lie to you, and subscribe so you don't miss the next descent into the past. Drop a comment and tell me honestly, would you last one day as a medieval killer, or would you be the one fertilizing the turnip field by noon? Because here's the question the movies never ask. What happens when the legend dies, the fantasy crumbles, and all you're left with is a rusty blade, a target who won't stop moving, and the dawning realization that absolutely nobody is coming to save you? Let's find out. Let's be honest about who actually ended up with a blade in their hand and a target on their back. Nobody in the Middle Ages woke up bright-eyed and said, you know what, I think I'll spend my life crouching in alleys and disappointing my mother. That's not how it worked. Becoming an assassin wasn't a career choice. It was what happened after every other choice evaporated like morning mist over a chamber pot. These weren't mysterious figures trained in shadowy monasteries by wise mentors who spoke in riddles. They were people who ran out of roads and found themselves staring down a very dark alley with only one way out. Picture the candidates. A soldier whose side lost the war, now wandering with nothing but calloused hands and a sword he's not supposed to have. A peasant who watched his crops fail, his livestock die, and his family scatter like leaves, until the only skill left was desperation and the ability to move quietly, because he hasn't eaten in days and loud movements cost energy he doesn't possess. A thief who got too good at slipping through windows and not good enough at knowing when to quit, now facing a choice between the gallows and a man who whispers offers in dark taverns. These were the recruits, broken, hollow, and just desperate enough to say yes. And sometimes, yes, sometimes it was someone darker. Someone who discovered they enjoyed the fear in another person's eyes a little too much. The kind of person villages whispered about. The one children crossed the street to avoid. The misfit who finally found a use for the thing growing inside them that they couldn't name and couldn't control. The medieval underworld didn't ask questions. It didn't care about your past or your preferences or what you did in the dark when you thought no one was watching. It cared about results. And if you could deliver results and keep your mouth shut, well, congratulations, you found employment. But here's the thing about that kind of recruitment. It didn't come with training. It didn't come with mentorship or a trial period or someone to show you the ropes. You learned by doing, by failing, by somehow surviving the first few attempts when you had no idea what you were doing, and absolutely everyone was better at this than you. There was no orientation. No one handed you a manual titled "So You've Decided to End a Nobleman." You figured out how to move in darkness by moving in darkness and hoping the guard didn't turn around. You learned which wounds killed quickly and which ones just made people angry by watching, by guessing, by cleaning up your own messes before anyone traced them back to you. And the loneliness of it. That's the part nobody talks about. You couldn't tell anyone what you did. Not your remaining family, not the friends you had before this life, certainly not the barmaid who smiled at you across the tavern and asked where you're from and what brings you to town. Every conversation became a performance. Every relationship a liability. You learned to lie the way other people learn to breathe, automatically, constantly, without thinking. And after a while, you forgot what the truth even sounded like. You forgot who you were before the blade and the shadows and the running. So when you imagine a medieval assassin, don't picture a sleek predator in black silk. Picture a hollowed-out person standing in a muddy street, watching a man across the square who has no idea his time is running out. Picture someone who hasn't slept properly in weeks, who startles at sudden noises, who can't remember the last time they laughed at something that wasn't dark and broken and absolutely not for sharing. Picture someone who chose this because every other door closed, locked, and barred itself from the inside. And now here they are, holding a blade that isn't even theirs, waiting for a signal that might never come, because in this line of work, the only thing certain is that nothing is certain, and the only person you can trust is the one holding the dagger, and even then, you're not entirely sure. That's who became an assassin. Not legends, not heroes, just people who ran out of tomorrows and decided that if they were going down, they'd take someone with them. And now, let's talk about what happened when they finally got the job, because the work itself, that's where the real nightmare began. So you've taken the job. Someone slid a coin purse across a tavern table, whispered a name you're not supposed to remember, and promised you enough silver to disappear for a while. Maybe start over somewhere the past can't find you. That's the dream anyway. The reality? You were about to learn the oldest lesson in the assassin's trade. The person hiring you is the most dangerous person you'll ever meet. Think about it from their perspective. They need someone dead. Badly enough to seek out a shadow, to risk everything on a stranger with a blade. That means they're desperate, or ambitious, or terrified, or all three at once. And desperate people don't make reliable employers. They make promises they can't keep, guarantees they can't honor, and plans that assume you'll be dead before anyone asks uncomfortable questions. You weren't a partner in this arrangement. You were a liability wearing a human face, and liabilities have a way of getting resolved. Here's how it usually went down. You'd get half the payment up front, just enough to convince you this was real, not enough to actually change your life. The other half waited until after the job was done, after the target stopped breathing, after you proved you could deliver, and you'd believe that second half was coming because you had to believe it. Otherwise, why were you risking your neck in a nobleman's bedroom while he snored 3 feet from a guard who definitely wasn't sleeping? But the moment that blade found its mark, your value to the client plummeted to 0. Actually, below 0, because now you knew something. You knew who wanted who dead. You knew the method, the timing, the whispered conversations in shadowed corners. You were a walking confession, and confessions have a way of ending up at the bottom of rivers. So the client vanished. They didn't meet you at the arranged spot. They didn't leave the second payment under the loose stone behind the chapel. They simply evaporated like they never existed, leaving you standing in the rain holding a bloody dagger and the sudden sick realization that you've been played. And if they were particularly thorough, they didn't just vanish. They sent someone else to make sure you vanished too. Clean up the loose end. Tie off the contract with something sharper than coin, because why pay for silence when a knife is cheaper and more permanent? Sometimes the trap was even more elaborate. You'd arrive at the target's location only to find guards waiting, alert, ready. Congratulations. You just walked into a setup designed to eliminate you and your target in one convenient bloodbath. The client never wanted that nobleman dead. They wanted you both dead. You for the kill, him for whatever political game was playing out behind closed doors. You were a pawn who thought they were a player, and pawns don't survive the endgame. And even when the client was honest, even when they paid in full and disappeared like they promised, you still couldn't relax. Because now you knew their name, their face, their weakness. And people in power don't like being known by people who kill for a living. They'd lie awake some nights, staring at the ceiling, wondering if you'd ever come for them, wondering if you'd ever decide that what you knew was worth more than the silence you promised. And eventually, most of them would decide they couldn't take that chance, so they'd hire someone else. Someone younger, hungrier, cheaper. Someone to find you and finish what the original contract started. You weren't an employee. You weren't a contractor. You were a temporary solution to a permanent problem, and temporary things get discarded. That's the part the stories leave out. The hero walks away with the money and the satisfaction of a job well done. You walk away looking over your shoulder for the rest of your short, miserable life, knowing that somewhere out there, someone who knows your name is deciding whether you're worth the price of a blade. But let's say you beat the odds. Let's say you got paid and escaped, and the client forgot you existed. You still had to do the actual killing, and that meant dealing with the target, the guards, the walls, the weapons, and about 1,000 ways to die before breakfast, because getting paid was just the beginning. The real nightmare was still waiting in the dark, and it had friends with swords. You've accepted the contract. The coins are tucked somewhere they won't jingle and give you away. The client's face is already starting to blur in your memory, which is exactly how you want it. Now all you have to do is find one specific person in a world without streetlights, photographs, or reliable addresses, slip past everyone who wants to keep them alive, and end them without making enough noise to wake the dogs. Simple, right? Except the person you're hunting isn't some random peasant who left their door unlocked. Your target is important, powerful. The kind of important that comes with walls and guards and people whose entire job is watching for exactly the kind of trouble you're bringing. Let's talk about those walls first, because you're going to spend a lot of time staring at them. Castles weren't designed to be inviting. They were designed to say, "Try something, please, we're bored, and we have boiling oil." You're looking at stone walls, 30 feet high, gates reinforced with iron, towers positioned so every approach is visible from at least 3 angles, and that's just the outside. Inside, you've got courtyards where guards stroll in pairs, corridors that twist in ways that make no sense unless you grew up here, and doors that all look identical, except the one you need is probably locked and guarded by someone who genuinely hates his job and takes it out on strangers. Speaking of guards, they're not the sleeping, ale-swilling incompetents the songs describe. These are men who stay alive by staying alert. They know every face in this household, every servant's schedule, every creaky floorboard that might hide an assassin's footsteps. They notice when the new kitchen boy stands a little too straight, or keeps his hands hidden, or doesn't know which staircase leads to the chapel. And when they notice, they don't ask questions. They grab arms first and ask later, assuming you're still conscious enough to answer. Then there are the servants themselves, the invisible army that keeps a noble household running. Cooks, maids, stable hands, pages, priests, all of them with eyes and ears and mouths that gossip faster than fire through dry grass. You can't bribe them all. You can't threaten them all. And you definitely can't predict which one will mention to the captain of the guard that there's a stranger lurking near the family quarters, a stranger who doesn't know which side the Lord takes his morning bread on, a stranger who looks like he's measuring the distance between shadows and wondering if he can cross it before someone screams. And your target? They know someone might be coming. They've known their whole lives. These people grew up with food tasters and locked doors, and mothers who whispered warnings about rivals and enemies, and the cousin who smiled too much at family gatherings. They don't eat without watching someone else eat first. They don't sleep in the same room 2 nights in a row. They have decoys, doubles, escape routes hidden behind tapestries. Some of them are so paranoid they sleep in full armor with a dagger in each hand and a guard stationed inside the bed curtains. You're not hunting prey that doesn't know it's being hunted. You're stalking an animal that evolved specifically to survive people exactly like you. And let's not forget the dogs. Dogs who don't care about your disguise or your cover story or your carefully memorized patrol schedules. Dogs who smell fear, who smell blood, who smell the fact that you don't belong here and never will. One bark and everything you've worked for, everything you've risked, collapses into torchlight and running feet, and the sudden terrible realization that you're not the predator anymore. You're the reason everyone gets to watch an execution before lunch. So you wait, you watch. You learn the rhythms of this place, the moments when guards glance away, the servants who drink too much and talk too freely, the windows that might open if you knew the right signal. You become a ghost haunting the edges of someone else's life, invisible, patient, hungry. And when the moment finally comes, when the stars align, and the guard looks left, and the dog is somewhere else, and your target is alone and vulnerable, and you have one single heartbeat to change everything, you'll move. And you'll pray that all those weeks of waiting, all that silence and hunger and fear was enough. Because if it wasn't, if you miscalculated by even a breath, you won't get a second chance. You'll get whatever the guards decide to do before the sun comes up. And believe me, they've had a lot of practice. They've been waiting for you too. You found your moment. The stars aligned, the guard looked away. The target is alone and vulnerable, and you're moving, because this is the only chance you'll get, and hesitation is just another word for dying. Your heart's pounding so loud, you're sure someone must hear it. Your palms are sweating despite the cold. You reach for your weapon, the tool that's going to end a life, and hopefully let you walk away from the wreckage, and that's when the second nightmare begins, because your weapon is a joke. Forget everything you've seen in movies and video games. There are no retractable wrist blades, no spring-loaded daggers, no throwing knives perfectly balanced to sink into throats from 50 paces. There's no custom leather harness with hidden pockets for poison vials and lockpicks and backup plans. You have whatever you could steal, sharpen or hide without making noise. And right now, gripping it in sweaty fingers while your target sleeps 3 feet away, you're suddenly aware that your entire life depends on a piece of metal some blacksmith threw together in an afternoon because a guard needed something pointy and didn't want to wait. Let's start with the dagger, because that's probably what you're holding. It's not fancy, it's not ornate, it's a blade, hopefully sharp, hopefully not rusted, hopefully long enough to reach something vital and short enough to hide beneath your tunic. You didn't choose it. You found it or stole it or inherited it from someone who didn't need it anymore because they made a mistake you're determined not to repeat. It's got nicks along the edge from previous use. The grip is wrapped in leather that's seen better decades. It might have belonged to 3 other desperate people before you, each one passing it along when they no longer had hands to hold it. And now it's your turn. Poison sounds more elegant, doesn't it? Silent, sophisticated. The assassin's weapon of choice for those who prefer brains over brawn. Except medieval poison wasn't elegant. It was guesswork wrapped in herbs and hope. You couldn't buy a reliable vial of death from a specialist. You gathered plants you half recognized, mushrooms you hoped were the right kind, minerals that might kill or might just make your target wish they were dead for a few days before recovering angry and very suspicious of anyone carrying food. There was no dosage chart, no quality control, no way to test it without risking your own life or alerting the target when they don't die, but definitely notice something strange in their wine. So maybe you're using a garrote, just a length of cord or wire to wrap around a throat and squeeze until the struggling stops. Quiet, effective, personal. Also requires you to get close enough to touch, close enough to feel them fight, close enough that their dying breath ghosts across your face, and you carry that sensation with you for the rest of your life. And you have to hold on. Hold on while they thrash and claw and try to scream. Hold on while your arms burn and your vision blurs and every instinct screams to let go and run. Hold on until it's over, and then stand there in the silence, shaking, wondering if you can still feel them, or if that's just your own pulse pretending. Maybe you have a bow, a small one, designed to be carried and concealed. Effective at range if you're skilled, which you probably aren't, because skill requires practice, and practice requires time and arrows and a place to shoot without attracting attention. You have maybe one shot. One chance to loose an arrow through darkness and distance and hit exactly the right spot on a moving target who might turn at the wrong moment or flinch or simply be wearing armor you couldn't see from your hiding place. Miss, and you've announced yourself. Hit, but not kill, and you've announced yourself and created a witness. Either way, you're running, and running with a bow is complicated. The truth is, your gear isn't a collection of tools. It's a collection of compromises. Everything you carry is too heavy or too light, too loud or too fragile, too obvious or too useless when you actually need it. You can't test your equipment because testing draws attention. You can't replace it because replacement costs money you don't have. You can't trust it because it's failed other people before you and you have no reason to believe you're special. So you grip your dagger a little tighter, test the edge with your thumb one last time, and move forward because there's no going back now. And in the darkness, just before you strike, you let yourself imagine what it would be like to hold something that wouldn't break, wouldn't fail, wouldn't leave you alone and bleeding in a stranger's bedroom with footsteps approaching fast. But imagination doesn't keep you alive. Steel does, hopefully. Now or never. You move. The blade finds its mark, finally, After all that waiting and watching and wondering if you'd freeze when the moment came. You didn't freeze. You did it. The target is down, silent, done. And for one single heartbeat, you let yourself feel it. Relief. Triumph. The dizzying rush of actually surviving something that should have killed you. Then the second heartbeat comes, and with it, the realization that surviving the kill was the easy part. Now you have to survive what comes next. Because here's the truth. They never show you in the stories. The assassin doesn't get a moment of quiet victory. Doesn't get to kneel beside the fallen and whisper something profound. Doesn't get to fade dramatically into mist while dramatic music swells. You get to run. Run through darkness you can't quite see, over ground you don't quite know, away from sounds you don't quite recognize but understand completely. Shouts, horns, dogs. Always the dogs. Someone found the body faster than you hoped, or the guard turned around sooner than you calculated, or the target made a noise you didn't hear because your own heartbeat was too loud in your ears. It doesn't matter why. What matters is the running. Your boots slap stone, then mud, then stone again. Your lungs burn. Your hand is still wrapped around the dagger because you can't let go, can't drop it, can't risk leaving evidence, even though the evidence is currently smeared up to your wrist and drying tacky in the cold night air. Behind you, the shouts multiply. More voices now. More torches painting the walls orange. Someone's organized. Someone's angry. Someone's good at this, and you're just hoping to reach the postern gate before they figure out which way you went. If you're lucky, you planned for this. You scouted escape routes, bribed a guard who'll look the other way for exactly 10 heartbeats, stashed a change of clothes in a place only you know. If you're lucky, you have a horse waiting, or a boat, or a friend who owes you and won't ask questions when you show up covered in someone else's life and shaking like a man with a fever. If you're lucky, you survive the night and wake up somewhere else, somewhere safe, somewhere you can breathe again. But luck has a way of running out, and even if you make it, even if you lose the dogs and outrun the pursuit and find yourself hours away with the sun coming up and no one following, you're not done. Because now you have to find your client, the one who promised payment, the one who swore they'd meet you at the arranged place with the second half of what you're owed, the one who's probably already heard the news and is deciding right now whether paying you is smarter than eliminating the problem permanently. You'll approach that meeting carefully, watching shadows, reading faces, listening for the wrong kind of silence. And maybe they'll pay. Maybe they'll smile and hand over the coins and wish you well and disappear from your life forever. Or maybe you'll walk into an ambush, meet someone else's desperate killer, and finally understand what your target felt in that last heartbeat before everything went dark. And even if you get paid, even if you escape clean and the client vanishes and no one comes looking, you still have to live with what you did, with the memory of how they looked in that final moment, with the sound, if there was one, with the way their weight changed when they stopped fighting. You'll carry that into every quiet room, every dark night, every moment when there's nothing to distract you from the thing living inside your memory now. And you'll tell yourself it was worth it. Tell yourself they deserved it. Tell yourself you had no choice. And maybe that's even true. But truth doesn't change what you become when you trade someone else's life for coin. It doesn't make you sleep better. It doesn't make you less alone. Because that's the final secret they don't put in the songs. The assassin doesn't just kill their target. They kill something in themselves. Something that never grows back. And when the running finally stops, when the danger finally fades, when there's nothing left but silence and the slow realization that you survived, you'll sit alone in whatever hole you're hiding in and wonder if survival was worth the price. You'll wonder if there's any way back to who you were before. And somewhere in the darkness, very far away, but getting closer, you'll hear the dogs again. Not real dogs this time, just the ones in your head. The ones that never stop hunting. The ones that know exactly where you live and exactly what you did and exactly how long you have before they find you again.